Hey guys, I'm at a training today, and so I wanted to go ahead and give you guys this PowerPoint presentation that's over classical China. Now, if you have not taken the reading quiz yet, please tell the substitute that you guys need to take your reading quiz using your handwritten notes. And once you've done that, you're ready for this presentation. Now, I should also mention, do not start this presentation while other people are taking the reading quiz, please. Yes, thank you. Okay, so today we're going to talk about classical China. Classical China is about the same time period as Persia and the Persian Empire, what we call the classical time period. Now, this is a map gives us an idea of what the Han Dynasty looked like during this time. So there you go. Now, the first empire that we're going to talk about, the first dynasty really, is the Qin. Okay, and dynasty basically just means empire, but it's the word that is used more often when we're talking about China. So we often talk about dynasties in China. The Qin, the thing that's interesting about them, it was started by this guy. His name is in red. Qin, spelled with a Q, but it's pronounced Qin Shi Huangdi. He became the first emperor of China. He did something that was called, we call it established a centralized government. I'm going to talk about that on the next slide. And he's the one who started the Great Wall of China, or continued the Great Wall of China, actually. Now, a couple of things interesting about Qin. First of all, he did not really like educated people. He did not really like books. I know we talked about this when we were talking about why people study history, and that some people like to burn books and they don't like history. Well, Qin was one of those guys. In fact, as you can see here, he personally had his guys bury alive 460 scholars who did not appreciate him. And he burned a bunch of books, all the ones except the ones that were useful, like he liked science books and books about agriculture, but not history and English and things like that. So he was definitely anti-education. And this concept of policies of centralization is actually really important. And it talks about here that they did things like standardize the laws and the currencies, the same thing they did in Persia, where they're trying to make things the same across the kingdom. But centralization also means, and why don't you write this down as a definition? Centralization is keeping power in the hands of one person. So in a centralized government, one person, the emperor or the king, is going to keep all the power. He doesn't want to share power with other people. Okay, that's what we call centralization. The other thing that's really interesting about Qin is his tomb, and I'm going to put I'm going to put a link to watch this video that shows the tomb. When he was buried, he left this amazing underground tomb that was not discovered until 1974, and it still hasn't been completely opened. It's really amazing, and that's a cool thing about history is even though things happened a long time ago, there's still a lot of things to be discovered, and you're going to see in this video that we still haven't uncovered everything in his tomb. Okay, so the Qin dynasty didn't actually last that long. It actually collapsed. The main reasons, people didn't really like Qin. He was burning the books and killing the scholars. And he just wasn't very popular, so he actually eventually got taken over. And the Qin dynasty fell, and there was a time where there was kind of a civil war. The next dynasty, which is called the Han. And the Han lived a lot longer. And from this slide, I think what's interesting is the crucial leader was a guy named Han Wudi, Yes, Han, sort of like Han Solo, and Woody, kind of like a Wookiee, which would be, oh my God, what's his name? Han's friend. Oh my gosh, wow, I can't believe I'm blanking on that. Oh well, sorry. So Han Wudi is called the Martial Emperor, one of the most important from the Han Dynasty. Obviously, they named the dynasty after him. And he continued centralization and expansion. Okay. Um, and you can see here what some of the things they did were. They did taxes and they built roads and stuff like that. But what is really interesting to me is that they established Confucian educational system for training bureaucrats. So Qin hated scholars and he burned books. Well, all of a sudden Han comes along and he's like, hey, we're trying to build a country here. We're trying to build a government here. And I need educated people. So he comes up with the first universities in the world. First universities in the world opened in China. We're talking about, basically about 2,000 years ago. To give you an idea, at that time in Europe, people were still like Vikings and barbarians. I mean, nobody was being educated. And here in China, they had this amazing university set up. And they set up an educational system where anybody who was smart enough could go to school. They took a test to see if they were good enough to work for the government. And if they were good enough to work for the government, then they got a job working for the government, which at that time was a pretty good job. And that's what they call training bureaucrats. So, you might have heard or imagined that, China has a good education system. People take education very seriously in China. Well, if you look back at history, that all started, 2,000 years ago in the Han Dynasty when they began with universities and they began to train people to work for the government through the Confucian educational system. Also, you can see here they expanded their empire. You read about that in there. And obviously, this lecture is not replacing the reading. I'm just highlighting some of the things that I think are the most important. From this page, you can read through it if you want, but I'm just going to skip over it. This is covered in the reading. Okay, a couple things I want to highlight here. We're talking about trade and commerce. First of all, here we see the first mention of silk, and silk is such an important product in China. During this time, China began to develop silk, began to make silk, and it was something that people wanted all over the world. And they also invented paper. And this is going to be another important invention. And you might, when you think China, if I ask you, what do you think of when you hear the word China before I gave this lecture? You're probably going to think, made in China. Well, everything's made in China. That's what everyone says. Well, what you're going to find as we go through world history is, yes, it's true. Everything is made in China, and a lot of the great inventions that have impacted the world started in China. Things like paper, which people used for thousands of years, up until now when we don't use paper, unless you're one of those people that prefer a paper textbook instead of an online textbook. Silk, I know silk doesn't sound important, but we're going to talk later about silk and why it was a really big deal at the time. We're going to talk about that in a couple weeks when we focus on the Silk Road. But you do see here, the chapter actually mentions the Silk Road. And the Silk Road is basically a series of trade routes that people used to trade various items, not just silk. All right, let's move on. Okay, so what happened in the Han Empire? Well, a couple things happened. One is, as you see here, expeditions consumed the empire's surplus. That means they were taking over places and it was expensive. But what's more interesting is this bit about social tensions. Basically, as the Han became successful and as people started to trade items, some people got very, very rich, and other people stayed poor or ordinary. And the more a few people got richer and richer and richer, and everybody else kind of stayed the same, there started to be a lot of conflict between the two groups. So anytime you have a society where you've got, people getting very, very rich and other people not, there's going to be problems. In the case of, and you hear that even in the United States, there's been a lot of talk in the last few years about, the rich in America are getting richer and richer and richer, the 1%, and other people are, staying the same. And, a lot of people are upset about that. So similar thing happened in the Han. They tried something where they tried to take some of the land from the rich people and give it to the poor. And the poor didn't really like that. I'm sorry, the rich didn't really like that. Of course, the poor liked it, and then people got mad, and then basically all didn't work out. And basically, the other thing that actually is not on this is that they began to get attacked and invaded by nomadic tribes, and that's in your reading, so make sure you know that. So combination of social tensions, problems between particularly the rich and the poor, the cost of military expeditions, and the invasion of the nomadic tribes were the main reasons for the fall of the Han. Okay, so that was a very short description of the absolute highlights of the Han. So I hope you have paused this video, go back to this video, and use the information that's important. Make notes in your notebook. I want to mention to you the homework, because the rest of the class period you have to work on this homework. And you'll see here on the hub you have a packet of reading, and this is kind of the longest reading package that you guys actually. Is it the first? That's really the first real reading packet you guys have had. So I wanted to kind of talk through what you're going to see here. So you go to the hub. You've got two documents. You can see there. One is called Religions from Little History, and then the second one is Great Revolutions in Religion and Thought. Okay, I want you to go through these readings. I want you to take notes in your spiral on the readings, because this is good information you need to have. Then you're going to go here's what I recommend. The second document, which is a Word document. At the end of the Word document are all the questions, the comprehension questions that I have for you. I recommend save that document, write your answers in that document, save them, and then do what it says in number 4, which is go into Google Forms and then put your answers in there. And then save both the Word document and also the PDF to your computer in a file for world history, so that you have this information. Okay, because this is good stuff. Now I put on here, as you can see, when you're writing your answers on the Google Forms, write good, thoughtful, college-level answers to the questions. Use proper grammar, spelling, and punctuation. Write in complete sentences. And the way I'm going to grade this, I might read everything that you wrote. I might read one question. I might read 3 questions. I might read 10 questions. So you want to make sure every single answer you give is awesome and thorough, and something that if I read, I'm going to say, wow, that's awesome. Okay, so that's where it says number 5, save the documents, including your answers, on your computer so you have it for the future. Do not submit anything on the hub, only answer using Google Forms. Okay, so the only thing you're actually submitting to me is a Google form. Okay, Guys, if you have questions, if you're confused about this, send me an email. On the course dashboard, you'll see my regular HISD email. I'll be checking my email while I'm at this event. And other than that, I think we're good. And I will see you guys on, let's see, tomorrow's Tuesday. I'll see you on Thursday. And I want to remind you, very important, if you have a project due on Thursday, go back and check those civilization pyramid major grade projects. Some people have them due on Thursday, right? If you're doing the one on, I think, Persia, Qin, and Han. So if that's you, prepare on Thursday to bring in something awesome and amazing. Again, if you have questions, email me or come find me tomorrow at lunch, and let's talk about it. Y'all have a great day.